In the evening, I was at one of the major hospitals.
But first, more on our Fox News alert about that powerful earthquake hitting Nepal this morning, causing more than 1,000 deaths, crumbling historic monuments, and shaking base camp at Mount Everest. The 7.8 magnitude quake could be felt in 4 additional countries. Joining us now on the phone from Kathmandu is GRN reporter Ramyata Limbu. She's joining us with an update on what's happening at this hour. Ramyata, thank you for joining us. Tell us what you are experiencing and seeing there in Kathmandu at this hour.
Well, it's almost 10 o'clock. It's 10:30 at night here, so people, I think most people are outside their houses, like camped outside their houses under makeshift shelters, because there's still a lot of fear and terror that a larger quake might hit. Although we've been experiencing aftermath tremors just within the last 1 hour, I've already experienced 2. Early on in the evening, I was at one of the major hospitals of Kathmandu, and it was quite, chaotic, because there were more patients or more people coming in that the hospital actually has the capacity. The emergency was overflowing with serious cases, but what I saw outside was like makeshift, immediate emergency service centers being set up, people giving saline drips, people being administered first aid, because there's no place inside. I saw a gentleman with a broken back who was lying on a tarpaulin sheet, a plastic sheet on the ground, because there weren't enough beds, and I think he had to be moved to another hospital because there was not enough room. A lady was brought in, her baby was brought in because the house that they were in with another group of people, there were some prayers going on, had collapsed, and they were among the fortunate ones to be pulled out. But she was saying that she had no idea how many were still trapped inside, so it's still very difficult to say. I mean, the toll is rising, and I think the authorities, the public, everyone is still taking stock of the the seriousness, the severity of what has happened.
How would you say the emergency response in and of itself is being handled at this time? I know you talked about the fact that hospitals are overcrowded at this point, but in terms of taking care of those survivors, getting food and water and blankets to people who may be in need, how do you respond? What's the response been like?
I think it's been an extreme challenge. It's extremely challenging for the government, for the health authorities, for the public, because the magnitude of this earthquake was not expected. Although Nepal does fall on a seismic zone, and we've experienced quakes in the past. But when I was in the hospital, people were worried about for the patients there, or the extra number of patients. How do we we need water, we need food, we need blankets. And I met a member of parliament who was visiting, and he was basically kind of admitting that, there is very little presence of the government at the moment, in the hospital. I think volunteers were just coming in, young people pouring in, just trying to help, do whatever little they could do. And people are probably not, one person told me that she wouldn't probably even be going home. She'd rather spend that day or night in the hospital helping out there. Also, it would be safer for her than going back inside the house.
It's obviously a chaotic and overwhelming situation. As I understand it, a number of temples and other sacred sites were affected as well?
Yes. Kathmandu Valley has, I think, 7 or 8 World Heritage sites, and quite a few of them have been affected, seriously damaged. There are pictures on Facebook and thing of them being completely demolished. These are like hundreds of years old, monuments. And one major monument, a landmark in Kathmandu, we call the Dharara. It's like a huge tower you can see from all around the valley. That has totally collapsed. Even many years ago, when there's a major earthquake, that landmark building had, was destroyed, a bit of it, but now it's completely razed, and a few people have died. A few sightseers or tourists inside at that landmark have died, have been reported dead.
Wow, it's unbelievable. We're taking a look at the images and also a shot there from Everest Base Camp, because as I understand it, avalanches were triggered there at that site, where a number of climbers are spending time before they make the trek up Mount Everest.
Yes, there should be about 300 climbers at the Everest region this time because it's the major spring climbing season. I did earlier speak to a representative of the tourism ministry, and he did confirm that yes, several people had died, and rescue operations had been made difficult due to the weather. It's kind of cloudy, windy, so had been made difficult.
Yeah, a lot of those climbers are people from around the world, including a number that come from the United States. So, Ramyata, I know this is a very tough situation for all involved and for you there trying to report on this story. Please keep us updated. A very devastating and difficult situation as we continue to report on the breaking news. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, folks, after that report from Fox News, which is not current, I want to give you the current update from Asia Pacific. Nepal terrorized by aftershocks hampering relief efforts. A growing sense of despair spread through Kathmandu on Sunday as the devastated Nepali capital was convulsed by aftershocks that sent residents screaming into the streets where they were pelted by heavy rain. A day after, an earthquake killed more than 2,400 people and injured about 5,900 residents, grew frantic, and the government, entirely overwhelmed by the enormousness of the challenge facing the country, struggled to provide relief or much hope. Streets in parts of this city of about 1.2 million were impassable, not so much from quake damage, but because tens of thousands of people have taken up residence there. It was a strategy endorsed by the government. The already difficult situation in much of the capital, where safe shelters are scarce, was made worse Sunday when rains began to pour down on huddled masses. It is increasingly evident that authorities here were ill-equipped to rescue those trapped and would have trouble maintaining adequate supplies of water, electricity, and food. In my neighborhood, the police are conspicuous by their absence, said Sridhar Katari of the South Asia Center for Policy Studies in Kathmandu. There is not even a show of force to deter vandalism, which some reports say is on the rise. On Sunday, the government began setting up 16 relief stations across Kathmandu and the rest of the country while rescue operations continued. The relief stations are expected to ease distribution of water, food, and medicine, said Lakshmi Prasad Dogkal, a spokesman at the Ministry of Home Affairs. Electricity has been intermittent at best in Kathmandu and absent entirely in other parts of Nepal, but that is not wholly unusual in a country where nighttime blackouts are routine. Many hotels, commercial buildings, and wealthy homes in the capital have their own generators, but nearly all of the country's gas and diesel supplies are brought in from India, and with traffic reduced to a crawl along major highways, those supplies could dwindle quickly. Some gas stations in Kathmandu have already run dry. Others are rationing their remaining supplies. Thousands of Kathmandu's residents squatted on streets throughout the city, either because their homes had been destroyed or because continued aftershocks, including one of magnitude of 6.7, left them too afraid to go back inside. Other residents were camping out in schools, school playgrounds, and government offices.
Response to the situation in Nepal is our
We are working in this rescue program since 1 o'clock yesterday, and we are working here.
I underline that our rapid rescue and relief response to the situation in Nepal is our primary mission. Now, since we are going in there, we are also obviously looking to bring back Indians and citizens of other countries where we have the space back to India. So far, our people have only gone into Kathmandu. We don't know the situation which is west of Kathmandu, where a lot of damage was done.
The government announced that schools would remain closed for at least 5 days, and it pleaded with government workers to help in local rescue efforts in place of their usual jobs. Stephen Groves, who lives in Kathmandu, said he had been inspecting a building for cracks shortly after noon on Sunday when the biggest of many aftershocks hit, leading to terrified screams from those nearby. The whole time I was thinking if the building next to me was going to come down on top of me, Mr. Groves said in an email. People here are in a panic, and every aftershock contributes to that. They are not going indoors. They are staying in the roads and in open areas. Many are searching for family members. This is a map that shows the epicenter of the earthquake, aftershocks, and an avalanche triggered on Mount Everest. Mr. Groves said he had gone to a hospital in the capital on Saturday, where hordes of people were lying on the ground outside the building, many with intravenous drips hooked up to their arms and shocked looks on their faces. The city was awash with rumors that the worst aftershocks were yet to come, and with fears of greater destruction in the countryside, large swaths of which remain unreachable by phone. Subhash Gamir, the editor-in-chief of the Nepalese, I think that's Nepalese newspaper Republica, said he managed to reach his father in his village, home to about 3,000 people near the epicenter in Gorkha district. He said not a single house is left in our village, including our own house, Mr. Gamir said. On Mount Everest, helicopter rescue operations began Sunday morning to take wounded climbers off the mountain, where at least 18 climbers were killed and 41 others injured, making the earthquake the deadliest event in the mountain's history. 3 Americans were among those killed, according to the State Department. Aftershocks and small avalanches throughout the day Sunday continued to plague the nearly 800 people staying at the mountain base camp at higher elevation camps. I believe mountain base is at 17,000 feet. After posting on Twitter that he was fairly safe but stuck at the base camp, a climber, Jim Davidson, then provided a more alarming update from Camp 1, which is above the base camp. Here's Jim Davidson saying, just had our biggest aftershock yet here at C1 on Everest. Smaller than original quake, but glacier shook and avalanches. Nick Talbot, 39, was attempting to be the first person with cystic fibrosis to climb Mount Everest when a 100 to 200 yard wall of ice and snow came barreling toward him. I ran away, he said in an interview. I thought, there's no chance I can get away. I just had my socks on. It knocked me into the rocks. I got up and it knocked me over again, he said. He was evacuated by helicopter Sunday afternoon. He returned without anything but the clothes he was wearing. All of his belongings were buried by the avalanche. I'm sure there will have been many fatalities just because the scale of it, he said. Tulasi Prasad Gautam, Director General of Nepal's Tourism Department, said he feared that continued aftershocks had trapped more climbers. In addition to the dead and injured, nearly 25 climbers who had been en route Saturday to Camp 2 from Camp 1 are missing. Actually, the tents are still there from some 20 to 25 climbers who were heading towards Camp 2 in the course of climbing practice, but they are not in contact. In a blog post Sunday, Eric Simonson of International Mountain Guide said the news from the Everest Base Camp was quite bleak, and that the company's encampment has been turned into a triage center, and our big dining tents are now being used as hospital tents. The tons and tons of falling ice going this vertical distance created a huge aerosol avalanche and accompanying air blast, he wrote. It is worth noting that over many expeditions we have never seen an avalanche from this area that was even remotely of this scale. Susan Parker Burns, a spokeswoman from the United States Embassy in Nepal, said Sunday in an email that a rescue and relief team from the United States Agency for International Development was sent by military transport to Nepal and that it would arrive on Monday. Also Sunday, the Israeli military said that it was preparing to send 2 Boeing 747s carrying 260 aid workers and more than 90 tons of cargo to Kathmandu. Now you see, who is helping the world out the most when they need help? The innocent? Israel. Yet they're the ones that are targeted the most, aren't they? And hated. About 600 Israelis are believed to be in Nepal, a popular destination for young backpackers after their compulsory military service. Megan David Adam, Israel's National Emergency Medical Response Organization, had already sent an advance team of 10 paramedics and 2 doctors to Nepal. Nepal will most likely require significant help. The country's existing political discord is likely to hamper rescue and rebuilding efforts. The government has been barely functional for more than a decade, with politicians of just about every stripe fighting over the scraps of increasingly desperate economy. A 10-year civil war between Maoist parties and the government ended in 2006, but the resulting Constituent Assembly spent 4 years trying to write a constitution without success. Paralysis ensued until elections in November 2013 led to the unexpected rout of the previously dominant Maoists. Nepal's people had already become exhausted with the political paralysis, but those feelings could turn explosive if relief and rescue efforts fail in the coming weeks, analysts said. The fear of just such an outcome could spur an intense international relief effort as an odd collection of countries, including China, India, and United States, were already cooperating on pushing Nepal's politicians toward compromise.